The crystalline spires of New Terra's capital stretched toward the amber sky like fingers reaching for distant stars. Within the highest tower of the royal citadel, King Charles Alexander stood before the vast transparisteel window, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. The weight of 3 centuries pressed upon his shoulders, each year etched into the lines of his face despite the life extension treatments that had preserved his reign. Ambassador Catherine Hartwell's message still glowed on the holographic display behind him, her words echoing in the silence of the throne room. The annual Christmas carol service on Earth's moon colony Bethlehem had become more than tradition, it was a symbol of humanity's enduring spirit across the galaxy. For 200 years, every monarch had attended, maintaining the sacred bond between the royal houses of the Terran Federation and the colonies that had spread human civilization to the farthest reaches of space. "Your Majesty," came the gentle voice of Prime Minister Elias Blackwood as he entered the chamber. His footsteps echoed softly against the polished marble floors, inlaid with fragments of meteorites from humanity's first interstellar expeditions. "The transport ships are prepared for departure to Bethlehem Colony. The security detail awaits your final approval." Charles turned slowly, his blue eyes reflecting the weight of a decision that would ripple across the galaxy. "Elias, old friend, there will be no journey to Bethlehem this year." The Prime Minister's face drained of color. In all his decades of service, he had never heard such words from his sovereign. "Your Majesty, surely you jest. The Christmas carol service is a beautiful tradition that has served its purpose," Charles interrupted, his voice carrying the authority of absolute rule. "But times change, and so must we. The galaxy faces challenges that require new thinking, not the comfort of old ceremonies." Through the great window, the lights of New Terra's sprawling metropolis began to flicker to life as evening approached. Hovercars traced brilliant streaks between the towering arcologies, while massive cargo vessels descended from orbit, their holds filled with exotic materials from distant worlds. It was a sight of prosperity and progress, yet Charles saw something else, the fragility of an empire stretched too thin across impossible distances. The king moved to his private study, a smaller chamber adjacent to the throne room. Here, ancient Earth artifacts mingled with gifts from alien ambassadors and trophies from humanity's greatest victories. A violin from the ruins of Vienna sat beside a crystal sculpture gifted by the peaceful Andromedans. Above the fireplace hung a painting of the first human settlement on Mars, now a gleaming metropolis of 50 million souls. "Do you remember the Zephyrian crisis, Elias?" Charles asked, settling into his favorite armchair, its leather worn smooth by generations of use. "Of course, Your Majesty. The rebellion in the Outer Rim territories, 3 years ago." "Rebellion," Charles repeated thoughtfully. Such a simple word for what nearly tore our empire apart. While I was presiding over ceremonies and state dinners, entire star systems were crying out for relief from the mining corporations. Children were dying in the asteroid belts while I cut ribbons and blessed starships. The Prime Minister shifted uncomfortably. "The crisis was resolved through diplomatic channels. Your presence at state functions maintains the stability that allows such negotiations to succeed." "Was it resolved, though?" Charles rose and activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room. 3-dimensional maps of the Terran Federation materialized, showing the vast network of colonies, trade routes, and military installations that comprised humanity's galactic empire. Red markers pulsed at dozens of locations: unrest, resource disputes, alien incursions, and worse. "Look at this, Elias. Really look." Charles gestured to the display. "Proxima Centauri demands independence. The mining unions on Kepler 442b threaten strikes. The colonists of Wolf 359 report mysterious disappearances. And what do? I attend a Christmas service while the galaxy burns." The hologram shifted to show recent intelligence reports. Admiral Sarah Chen's face appeared, her expression grim as she delivered her assessment from the frontier. "The Void Hunters have been spotted in 3 more systems," her recorded voice filled the room. "These aren't random raids, Your Majesty. Their ships move with purpose, following patterns we don't understand. They're testing our defenses, probing for weaknesses. The outer colonies are terrified. Charles paused the recording. The Void Hunters, Elias. Ships that appear from nowhere, strike without warning, and vanish like ghosts. They take people, thousands of them, and leave no trace. Our finest scientists can't explain their technology. Our greatest admirals can't predict their movements. And Ambassador Hartwell wants me to sing hymns on the moon while humanity's children disappear into the darkness. The Prime Minister's hand trembled slightly as he reached for his data pad. Perhaps we could arrange for Admiral Chen to attend the service in your place? It would maintain tradition while addressing your concerns about frontier security. You still don't understand, Charles said quietly. This isn't about finding a substitute or maintaining appearances. This is about fundamental change. For 300 years, the monarchy has been the symbolic heart of human civilization. We've been the constant that connects Earth to the farthest colonies, the reminder of who we are and where we came from. He moved to another display, this one showing demographic data from across the galaxy. But, look at these numbers, Elias. 70% of humans have never seen Earth. 60% were born on worlds their great-grandparents never knew existed. They don't dream of English gardens or Christmas carols, they dream of purple skies and twin suns, of crystal caves and floating cities. The data painted a picture of a species in transformation. Children born on high-gravity worlds grew stronger and denser than their Earth-born cousins. Those raised under different stars developed new art forms, new languages, new ways of thinking. The colonies weren't just extensions of Earth anymore, they were becoming something entirely new. The Andromedans have a saying, Charles continued. The tree that grows too tall without deep roots will fall in the first strong wind. We've grown very tall indeed, but our roots remain buried in Earth's soil. It's time to plant new ones. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority transmission. The air shimmered, and, suddenly, Ambassador Catherine Hartwell stood before them as a full-body hologram, her expression a mixture of confusion and concern. She wore the formal robes of her office, prepared for the opening ceremonies of the Christmas service. Your Majesty, Catherine began, her voice carrying across the light years in real time through quantum entanglement communicators. I've received most disturbing reports from the Royal Protocol Office. Surely there's been some misunderstanding about your attendance? No misunderstanding, Ambassador, Charles replied. I will not be attending the Christmas carol service this year, or any year hereafter. Catherine's face went pale. Behind her, the interior of Bethlehem Colony's great cathedral was visible, soaring arches carved from lunar rock, stained glass windows depicting humanity's journey to the stars, and preparation for a ceremony that had brought together representatives from every human world for 2 centuries. Your Majesty, with respect, this decision affects more than just Earth. Representatives from 400 colonies have traveled here. Alien ambassadors from 17 species are in attendance. The broadcast is scheduled to reach 8 billion souls across the galaxy. You cannot simply, I can, Charles interrupted, his voice carrying the full authority of his position. And, I have. The Christmas carol service will continue without me. Let it be a celebration of the colonies themselves, not a reminder of their dependence on distant Earth. Through Catherine's hologram, they could see the bustling activity of the cathedral. Engineers tested the broadcast equipment that would carry the service across the galaxy. Choirs from dozens of worlds rehearsed hymns and harmonies that blended human voices with the unique acoustics of their birth planets. Children from the outer colonies gaped in wonder at decorations that told the story of humanity's expansion into space. The people need this, Catherine pressed. In times of uncertainty, tradition provides comfort. Your presence gives them hope. Does it? Charles challenged. Or does it make them dependent? Does it tell them that their worth comes from connection to Earth, rather than from their own achievements? He gestured to the display showing frontier reports. While we sing of peace on Earth, the Void Hunters stalk our children on the rim. While we celebrate ancient traditions, new threats emerge that require new solutions. I've spent 3 centuries being a symbol, Catherine. It's time I became a leader. The ambassador's diplomatic training wore with genuine distress on her face. Your Majesty, if you're concerned about frontier security, we can arrange additional fleet deployments. If you're worried about colonial representation, we can modify the ceremony to, "You're not listening," Charles said, his voice rising slightly. This isn't about modifications or accommodations. This is about recognition that the human species is evolving beyond the need for Earth-centric traditions. The colonies aren't our children anymore, they're our equals, or soon will be. He turned back to the window, watching as the first stars became visible in New Terra's darkening sky. Among them, invisible but present, were the lights of 1,000 human worlds. Each one faced its own challenges, developed its own solutions, created its own culture. Yet all still looked to Earth for validation, for approval, for the comfort of tradition. "Do you know what message we send when I attend that service?" Charles asked. "We tell them they're incomplete without us. We tell them their achievements don't matter unless Earth acknowledges them. We make them perpetual children instead of the adults they've become." Prime Minister Blackwood cleared his throat carefully. "Your Majesty, perhaps there's wisdom in a gradual transition? Attending this year but announcing changes for the future?" "No," Charles said firmly. "Gradual change is the enemy of necessary change. If I attend this year and promise changes later, we'll have the same conversation next year, and the year after. The moment for half measures has passed." Through Catherine's hologram, they could hear the sound of approaching voices. Colony representatives were arriving for the pre-service reception, their excitement palpable as they prepared for what many considered the high point of their year. "Think of what this will do to them," Catherine pleaded. "Entire worlds have organized their calendars around this event. The children have prepared special performances. The Adelaide Colony's youth choir has been practicing for months." Charles felt the weight of those expectations, the disappointment that his decision would cause. It would have been easier to attend, to smile and sing and maintain the illusion that nothing had changed. But leadership, he had learned, often meant choosing difficult necessity over comfortable tradition. "Those children will remember this day," he said quietly. "But not as the day the king failed them. They'll remember it as the day they learned they didn't need a king to make their achievements meaningful. They'll remember it as the beginning of their true independence." The hologram flickered slightly as Catherine moved closer to the transmission node. "Your Majesty, I must ask, what has prompted this sudden change? Has something happened that the Royal Council should know about?" Charles hesitated, then decided on honesty. "I had a dream, Catherine. A strange dream that has haunted me for weeks. I saw humanity's future, not as a collection of colonies dependent on Earth, but as something new. Something greater than we've ever been before." He activated another display, this one showing predictive models created by the Royal Science Council. Lines of probability stretched into the future, showing the potential paths humanity might take. Some led to stagnation, others to fragmentation. But one path, a narrow, challenging route, led to transformation. "We stand at a crossroads," Charles explained. "Continue as we have, and we become a galactic empire in the old sense, vast, powerful, but ultimately brittle. Our colonies will always be colonies, looking to Earth for guidance. Our people will always be divided between the true humans of the homeworld and the colonists of the frontier." The prediction models shifted, showing alternative futures. "But if we change now, if we acknowledge that humanity has become something larger than Earth, we can become the first truly galactic species. Not an empire radiating from a central point, but a network of equals, each contributing their unique strengths to the whole." Ambassador Catherine was silent for a long moment, studying the data with the analytical mind that had made her one of humanity's finest diplomats. "You're talking about the end of the monarchy as we know it." "Perhaps," Charles admitted. "Or perhaps I'm talking about its evolution. The question is not whether humanity needs leadership, clearly, we do. The question is whether that leadership must be tied to Earth, to bloodlines, to traditions that made sense when our species lived on one world but may hold us back now that we live on thousands." Through the hologram, they could see that the cathedral was nearly full. Representatives from the great colony worlds took their places in sections organized by stellar proximity. The Centauri delegation, proud descendants of humanity's first interstellar colonists, sat near the front. Behind them came representatives from the industrial worlds of the solar manufacturing zone, the agricultural planets of the Fertile Crescent sector, and the research stations of the Deep Survey Initiative. Each group brought their own traditions, their own interpretations of human culture adapted to their unique environments. The children of the high-gravity worlds moved with careful precision, their dense bones making them stronger but requiring different techniques for simple tasks. The low-gravity colonists seemed to float rather than walk, their elongated forms graceful in ways that Earth-born humans could never match. "Look at them, Catherine," Charles said softly. "Really look at them. They're not Earth humans living on other worlds. They're becoming something new, something adapted to their environments in ways we're only beginning to understand. How long before we admit that they've evolved beyond the need for our ancient ceremonies?" The ambassador followed his gaze, seeing her congregation with new eyes. The delegates weren't just representatives, they were examples of humanity's incredible adaptability. They had taken the basic template of human consciousness and stretched it across countless environments, creating variations and innovations that would have been impossible on a single world. "The Martians have developed new mathematics based on their planet's orbital mechanics," Charles continued. "The deep space miners have evolved enhanced spatial reasoning that lets them navigate asteroid fields by intuition. The waterworld colonists have created art forms that exist only in three-dimensional aquatic environments. Each world, each environment, has pushed humanity to grow in different directions." He paused the display on a particular image, children from a dozen different worlds playing together during a previous Christmas service. At first glance, they appeared to be the same species. But closer examination revealed the subtle differences, variations in height, muscle density, even eye structure adapted to different light spectrums. "We're not one species anymore, Catherine. We're becoming something unprecedented, a family of related species, all recognizably human but each uniquely adapted to their environment. And we're trying to hold them all together with ceremonies designed for a single world." The weight of his words settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Prime Minister Blackwood sat heavily in a nearby chair, the implications of the king's decision finally becoming clear. "If you're right," Catherine said slowly, "then you're not just declining to attend a ceremony. You're declaring the end of Earth's role as the center of human civilization." "Not the end," Charles corrected. "The transformation. Earth will always be important as our birth world, our origin point. But it cannot remain our gravitational center if we're to become what we're capable of becoming." The holographic display shifted again, showing recent reports from the frontier expeditions. Humanity had made contact with 12 alien species, ranging from the peaceful Andromedans to the enigmatic crystalline entities of the Veil Nebula. Each contact had taught humans something new, pushed them to adapt and grow in ways their earthbound ancestors could never have imagined. "The aliens don't see us as Earthers and colonists," Charles observed. "They see us as humans, all of us, regardless of which world we call home. It's time we learned to see ourselves the same way." A priority alert flashed on the main display, drawing their attention to an urgent transmission from Admiral Chen on the frontier. Her face appeared, grim and exhausted. "Your Majesty, we've had another encounter with the Void Hunters. This time, they didn't just take people, they left something behind." The display shifted to show grainy sensor footage of strange, geometric structures growing like crystals on the surface of a remote mining world. The structures pulsed with an inner light that seemed to bend space around them. "We don't know what they are," Admiral Chen continued, "but they're affecting the colonists. Anyone who gets too close begins to change. Their neural patterns alter, their DNA starts to shift. It's like they're being prepared for something." Charles felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. "How many affected?" 3,000 so far, from the initial exposure. "But the structures are growing, and the effect is spreading." We've evacuated the planet, but if this is happening on other worlds. The transmission ended, leaving the three of them staring at the empty air where Admiral Chen's image had been. The magnitude of the threat was becoming clear. This wasn't just about raiders taking colonists. Something was actively trying to change humanity itself. Now do you understand? Charles asked quietly. While we maintain our ceremonies and traditions, forces beyond our comprehension are reshaping our species. We need leaders who can adapt, who can think beyond the constraints of earthborn assumptions. We need the collective wisdom of all our worlds, not just the traditions of one. Ambassador Catherine's diplomatic composure finally cracked slightly. Your Majesty, if the threat is as serious as Admiral Chen suggests, isn't this the worst possible time to abandon stabilizing traditions? Or the best time to embrace change? Charles countered. If humanity is going to face whatever the void hunters represent, we need to do it as a unified species, not as a collection of colonies dependent on a distant homeworld. He moved to his personal terminal and began composing a message that would be broadcast across the galaxy simultaneously with what should have been his arrival at Bethlehem Colony. I'm going to tell them the truth, Catherine. That the age of Earth's dominance is ending, and the age of humanity's true expansion is beginning. That they don't need my blessing to be worthy, my presence to be valid, my traditions to have meaning. The message began to take shape on the screen, not a formal royal proclamation, but something more personal, more honest. It spoke of dreams and futures, of the courage required to let children grow up and become more than their parents ever imagined. You're asking them to give up 3 centuries of tradition, Prime Minister Blackwood observed. I'm asking them to trade 3 centuries of tradition for 3 millennia of possibility, Charles replied. The question is whether they'll have the courage to accept the challenge. Through Catherine's hologram, they could see that the cathedral was now completely full. The ceremony was scheduled to begin in less than an hour, and still the royal transport had not appeared in Bethlehem's skies. Confusion was beginning to ripple through the assembled delegates. They're starting to realize you're not coming, Catherine reported. What shall I tell them? Charles saved his message and prepared it for broadcast. Tell them the truth. Tell them that their king believes in them enough to let them stand on their own. Tell them that humanity's greatest achievements lie not in its past, but in its future. He looked out once more at the stars visible beyond New Terra's atmosphere, each one representing worlds where humans had learned to think and live and dream in ways their ancestors could never have imagined. Soon, those humans would learn that their connection to Earth was not a chain binding them to the past, but roots that had given them the strength to grow into something unprecedented. The age of human childhood was ending. The age of human maturity was about to begin. And it would begin not with a king's blessing, but with a species' first steps into true independence. The transformation of humanity had begun with a simple decision: to stay home from church. The quantum communicator array hummed with energy as Ambassador Catherine Hartwell stood before the altar of Bethlehem Colony's cathedral, her hands trembling slightly as she held the sealed message from King Charles. Behind her, 400 colony representatives sat in stunned silence, their faces reflecting confusion, disappointment, and growing unease. The great stained glass windows cast rainbow patterns across the assembled crowd, but the light seemed dimmer somehow, as if the very absence of the king had changed the cathedral's atmosphere. Catherine had served as Earth's ambassador to the lunar colonies for 23 years, but she had never faced a moment like this. The Christmas carol service had been the cornerstone of colonial unity for 2 centuries, a reminder that despite the vast distances separating human worlds, they remained one people with shared traditions and values. Now she stood ready to deliver a message that might shatter that unity forever. My fellow humans, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the cathedral's acoustics and the quantum broadcast arrays that would carry her words to 8 billion souls across the galaxy. I have received a personal message from His Majesty King Charles Alexander, which I will now share with you in its entirety. She activated her personal hologram projector, and, suddenly, the king himself stood before the altar, his image solid and real despite being transmitted across the light years. His expression was calm but determined, the look of a man who had wrestled with a difficult decision and found peace with it. "My dear subjects, my fellow humans, my brothers and sisters among the stars," the king's hologram began, his words echoing through the cathedral and across the galaxy. "For 300 years, the Christmas carol service has symbolized our unity as a species, our connection to our birth world, and our shared heritage among the stars. Today, I stand before you not to continue that tradition, but to transform it." Murmurs began to ripple through the assembled delegates. Governor Marcus Webb of the Centauri colonies leaned forward in his seat, his weathered face creased with concern. Beside him, the ethereal figure of Coordinator Yuki Tanaka from the low-gravity worlds of the Outer Rim seemed to float slightly above her chair, her elongated limbs tensed with anticipation. "I will not be attending the Christmas carol service," the king continued, "not out of disrespect for our traditions, but out of respect for what you have become. For too long, we have defined humanity by its origin rather than its destiny. We have celebrated our past while ignoring the magnificent future you are creating every day." The hologram gestured, and data displays materialized around him, showing the incredible diversity of human achievement across the galaxy. Agricultural worlds that fed billions, research stations that pushed the boundaries of science, mining operations that harvested the raw materials of civilization from the hearts of dead stars. "Look at what you have accomplished without Earth's direct guidance. The Martian terraforming project that transformed a dead world into a garden. The Andromedan cultural exchange that gave us new art forms and new ways of thinking. The deep space research stations that have expanded our understanding of the universe itself." In the cathedral, Dr. Elena Vasquez from the Mars colonies felt tears streaming down her face. The terraforming project had been her life's work, generations of effort to transform the red planet into something that could sustain not just human life, but human dreams. To hear the king acknowledge it as a triumph of colonial achievement rather than Earth's beneficence struck her more deeply than any royal honor could have. "You have proven that humanity's strength lies not in our dependence on Earth, but in our ability to adapt, to grow, to become more than our origins. The children of the high-gravity worlds possess strength their Earthborn cousins cannot match. The pioneers of the water worlds have developed technologies that seem like magic to those who have never swum among the stars." The hologram paused, and King Charles's expression grew more serious. "But we face challenges that require all of our combined wisdom, not the comfort of ancient ceremonies. The void hunters stalk our frontier. Unknown forces seek to transform our very nature as a species. In the face of such threats, we cannot afford to remain children looking to Earth for reassurance. We must become the adults our situation demands." Governor Webb stood abruptly, his voice carrying across the cathedral despite the ongoing broadcast. "Your Majesty, with respect, this is madness. You speak of independence, but the colonies need Earth's guidance. We need the stability that royal tradition provides." The king's hologram turned to address him directly, the quantum communication array adjusting to follow the governor's position. "Marcus, old friend, you commanded the defense of Proxima Centauri during the Zephyrian crisis with no guidance from Earth. When the mining cartels threatened to strangle your colonies, you forged alliances and negotiated solutions that our Earthbound diplomats couldn't have imagined. What guidance did you need from us then?" Webb's face reddened with emotion. "That was different. That was necessity, survival. This ceremony, these traditions, they're what make us human. Without them, what separates us from the aliens we trade with? Our humanity is not defined by our ceremonies," the king replied gently. "It's defined by our compassion, our creativity, our refusal to surrender hope even in the darkest moments. These qualities don't come from Earth, they come from within each of you." Throughout the cathedral, reactions varied wildly. Some delegates nodded in agreement, seeing truth in the king's words. Others looked stricken, as if the very foundation of their identity was crumbling. The representatives from the newer colonies seemed more accepting of the king's message, while those from the older, more established worlds appeared deeply troubled. Young Commander Lisa Santos from the Jupiter research stations found herself standing without conscious decision. At 28, she represented the first generation of humans born in deep space, never having set foot on any planet at all. "Your Majesty," she called out, her voice carrying despite her youth, "what you're asking, it's terrifying. But, it's also liberating." The king's hologram smiled at her. "Tell us why, Commander." "Because it means our achievements are our own," she replied, her voice growing stronger. "When we solved the gravitational resonance problem that was tearing apart the Europa stations, we did it not because Earth told us how, but because human ingenuity found a way. When we made first contact with the crystalline entities, we succeeded because we approached them with the curiosity and openness that defines us as a species, not because we followed Earth protocols." Her words seemed to kindle something in the younger delegates. Across the cathedral, representatives from the frontier worlds began to sit straighter, their expressions shifting from confusion to something approaching excitement. But the older colonies weren't ready to let go so easily. Admiral Catherine Morrison, whose family had served the crown for 6 generations, stood with military precision. "Your Majesty, tradition provides stability in times of uncertainty." The colonies looked to Earth not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. "We understand the value of continuity, of proven systems." And, yet, the king's hologram replied, "Our most proven system failed to predict or prevent the Void Hunter incursions. Our most established protocols offered no defense against threats we couldn't comprehend. Perhaps it's time to admit that the universe has changed, and we must change with it." The broadcast signal flickered slightly, and, for a moment, additional holographic displays materialized throughout the cathedral. They showed recent intelligence reports from the frontier, mysterious structures growing on abandoned worlds, human colonists transforming into something not quite human anymore, ships appearing and disappearing without regard for the laws of physics as humanity understood them. "These are the challenges we face," the king continued. "And, I know, that humanity's response must come not from Earth's ancient wisdom, but from the collective intelligence of all our worlds. The mining colonies understand resource scarcity in ways Earth dwellers cannot. The frontier settlements know how to adapt to the impossible because they do it every day. The deep space stations have learned to think in 3 dimensions about problems that planet-bound minds struggle to grasp." Ambassador Catherine felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. As the king's representative, she had always been a bridge between Earth and the colonies, helping to maintain the delicate balance that kept human civilization unified. Now she was witnessing the deliberate dismantling of that balance. "Your Majesty," she interjected, "if not royal tradition, what will hold our scattered worlds together? What will prevent fragmentation, conflict, the kind of chaos that destroyed the First Galactic Republic?" The king's expression grew thoughtful. "That's perhaps the most important question you could ask, Catherine. And I believe the answer lies not in preventing change, but in embracing it wisely." The hologram gestured, and new displays appeared showing communication networks, trade routes, and cultural exchanges between the colonies. "Look at how your worlds already interact with each other. The Martian terraforming techniques adapted for use on Venus. The Centauri agricultural methods modified for the asteroid belt farms. The artistic movements that flow between worlds, creating new forms of beauty we never imagined." Dr. Vasquez from Mars found herself nodding involuntarily. The king was right, the most innovative solutions to her terraforming challenges had come not from Earth's libraries, but from collaboration with engineers on the ice worlds, biologists from the forest planets, and atmospheric specialists from the gas giant research stations. "You don't need Earth to coordinate this cooperation," the king continued. "You're already doing it yourselves, creating bonds based on mutual benefit and shared challenges rather than ancient obligations. What if, instead of looking backward to Earth for leadership, you looked forward to the kind of civilization you could build together?" The cathedral fell silent as the implications sank in. The king wasn't just declining to attend a ceremony, he was proposing the fundamental restructuring of human civilization. "But, this doesn't mean Earth abandons you," the king added quickly, sensing the fear in many faces. "It means Earth stops treating you as children and starts recognizing you as equals." We become partners in humanity's future rather than parents to humanity's colonies. Representative Zara Kim from the Vega colonies, where humans had learned to live in symbiosis with crystalline life forms, stood gracefully. Her skin bore the faint mineral patterns that marked those who had undergone the symbiosis process, making her simultaneously alien and beautifully human. "Your Majesty," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that revealed the influence of her crystalline partners, "the symbiosis has taught us something about growth. A parent organism that never releases its offspring will eventually consume them both. Perhaps it's time for humanity to learn what the crystals know, that true love means letting go." Her words seemed to resonate through the cathedral like a physical force. Even those who had opposed the king's message found themselves considering her perspective. The Vega symbiosis had been controversial when first discovered, with many Earth authorities calling it an abandonment of human purity. Yet it had produced innovations in biotechnology and consciousness research that benefited all of humanity. "Exactly," the king agreed. "And that's why, instead of attending this ceremony as your monarch, I'm addressing you as your partner in humanity's future. The Christmas carol service will continue, but let it be your celebration of your achievements, your traditions, your growth into something magnificent." The young Commander Santos spoke up again. "What about the threats we face? The void hunters, the unknown technologies, the challenges that might require unified response?" "An excellent question," the king replied. "And I believe the answer lies in recognizing that unity doesn't require hierarchy. The Andromedan Alliance faces similar challenges, and they've developed response protocols based on collective decision-making rather than central authority. What if humanity tried something similar?" Dr. Yoshi Nakamura from the research stations near the galactic core had been quiet throughout the exchange, but now he activated his personal communicator. "Your Majesty, our deep space observations have detected patterns in the Void Hunter activities. They seem to target worlds that are heavily dependent on external authority rather than internally resilient communities." This revelation sent a chill through the assembled delegates. The implications were staggering. If the Void Hunters specifically targeted dependent colonies, then Earth-centric organization might actually make humanity more vulnerable rather than stronger. If Dr. Nakamura's observations are correct, the king said grimly, then our traditional structure isn't just outdated, it's actively dangerous. The Void Hunters may be counting on our hierarchical organization to make us easier to manipulate or control. Governor Webb, who had been one of the strongest opponents of the king's message, suddenly looked ashen. His colony of Proxima Centauri had experienced 2 Void Hunter near encounters in the past year, both times when they were awaiting Earth's guidance on colonial development decisions. "My God," he whispered. "They hit us right after we requested Earth's approval for the new mining operations. We thought it was coincidence." "It wasn't," Dr. Nakamura confirmed. "The pattern is consistent across 17 incidents. The Void Hunters strike when colonies are in states of dependency, when they're waiting for external authorization rather than acting on their own initiative." The cathedral erupted in concerned voices as delegates began comparing their own experiences with Void Hunter encounters. Ambassador Catherine found herself struggling to maintain order as the implications became clear to everyone present. "This changes everything," Admiral Morrison admitted, her military training overriding her emotional attachment to tradition. "If our command structure is being exploited against us, we need to adapt our tactics." The king's hologram nodded gravely. "Which brings us to the real reason I'm not attending this ceremony. Not to abandon you, but to force you to recognize your own strength. Every moment you spend waiting for Earth's guidance is a moment the Void Hunters can use against you." Representative Kim from the Vega colonies tilted her head, the crystalline patterns in her skin pulsing with thought. "The symbiosis entities believe that the Void Hunters are testing humanity's readiness for some kind of transformation. Not conquest, transformation. As if they're waiting for us to evolve into something specific." "Evolve into what?" Commander Santos asked. "We don't know," Kim replied. "But the crystals suggest it requires us to think as a unified network rather than a hierarchical tree. Individual nodes with collective intelligence, rather than a central brain with dependent limbs. The king's expression grew thoughtful. Which would explain why they target dependency relationships. They're not trying to destroy us, they're trying to force us to grow. Dr. Vasquez from Mars stood again, her mind racing with possibilities. What if that's exactly what we need to do? What if we use this ceremony not to mourn the end of tradition, but to celebrate the beginning of something new? What do you propose? Ambassador Catherine asked. Instead of the Christmas carol service as we've always done it, what if we make it a declaration of human unity? Not unity under Earth's leadership, but unity as a species spread across the galaxy? The idea seemed to energize the assembled delegates. Conversations began breaking out across the cathedral as representatives from different worlds began discussing possibilities. The fear and confusion of moments before was transforming into excitement and determination. We could establish the Galactic Human Council, suggested Admiral Morrison, her military mind already working on practical details. Representatives from every world, with rotating leadership and collective decision-making authority. The Deep Space Research Network is already functionally independent, added Dr. Nakamura. We could serve as a communication hub, ensuring that every world stays connected to the collective intelligence. Governor Webb, still struggling with the implications, asked, but what about Earth? What about the monarchy? 3 centuries of tradition can't just be discarded overnight. The king's hologram smiled sadly. Marcus, the monarchy will adapt as it always has. Perhaps I'll become the first elected representative of Earth to the Galactic Human Council. Perhaps the royal house will become one voice among many rather than the voice above all. The future is unwritten. Representative Kim from Vega stepped forward, her crystalline patterns brightening. Your Majesty, the symbiosis entities would like to offer a gift to mark this transition. They've developed a consciousness-linking technology that would allow instantaneous communication between worlds, not just of words but of thoughts and emotions. A true galactic human network. The implications were staggering. Instantaneous communication across galactic distances had been a dream since humanity first left Earth. With such technology, the scattered worlds could function as a true unified organism while maintaining their individual identities. The catch, Kim continued, is that it only works for beings who have truly accepted their interdependence. It can't function through hierarchical command structures, it requires genuine equality and mutual respect. Ambassador Catherine felt her worldview shifting in real time. You're talking about the technological foundation for a completely new form of human civilization. Yes, the king agreed. A form that the Void Hunters can't exploit because there's no central authority to manipulate. A form that draws strength from diversity rather than uniformity. A form that our earthbound ancestors could never have imagined. Dr. Vasquez raised her hands for attention. Then, let's do it. Let's make this Christmas carol service the moment humanity grew up. Let's sing not just the old songs, but new ones that celebrate what we're becoming. The energy in the cathedral was electric now. Delegates were standing, voices rising in animated discussion, plans forming spontaneously as the greatest minds from across the galaxy began to work together without waiting for authorization from Earth. Commander Santos activated her communicator to reach the Jupiter research stations. Command, begin preparations for full network integration. We're about to become part of something unprecedented. Admiral Morrison was already coordinating with her military networks. All colonial defense forces, prepare for transition to autonomous cooperative protocols. The age of central command is ending. Governor Webb, despite his reservations, found himself swept up in the momentum. Centauri colonies will contribute our manufacturing capabilities to support whatever infrastructure this new alliance requires. The king's hologram watched the chaos of creation beginning to unfold and felt a deep satisfaction. This was what he had hoped for, not the orderly transition he might have planned, but the explosive creativity that happened when humans were freed to solve problems together. My friends, he said, his voice cutting through the excited conversations, you're doing exactly what I hoped you would do. You're taking charge of your own destiny. Ambassador Catherine found herself at the center of the storm, her diplomatic training finally finding its purpose. Your Majesty, if we're going to do this, we need to do it right. We need protocols, agreements, safeguards. Yes, the king agreed. But, not imposed from above. Developed collectively, with each world contributing its expertise. Earth's constitutional law, Mars's resource management, the deep space station's three-dimensional thinking, Vega's symbiotic consciousness research. The cathedral was transforming from a place of worship into a constitutional convention. Representatives were forming working groups, drawing up preliminary agreements, establishing communication protocols with their home worlds. But, underneath the excitement, a deeper realization was beginning to dawn. They weren't just changing how human civilization was organized, they were becoming something new entirely. The scattered, dependent colonies of an hour ago were evolving into the nodes of a galactic superorganism. And, somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the Void Hunters watched and waited to see if humanity would complete its metamorphosis in time. The Christmas Carol service had become humanity's graduation ceremony. The question was whether they would pass the final exam that was surely coming. 3 hours after King Charles's revolutionary broadcast, the Cathedral of Bethlehem Colony had transformed into humanity's first truly galactic constitutional convention. Where once neat rows of ceremonial seating had maintained colonial hierarchies, now clusters of intense discussion groups formed and reformed like living organisms. The great windows no longer cast their rainbow patterns across passive worshippers, but illuminated the animated faces of humans actively creating their species' future. Dr. Elena Vasquez found herself at the center of the Resource Management Working Group, her terraforming expertise suddenly crucial to questions she'd never considered. The fundamental issue, she explained to the mixed assembly of representatives from mining worlds, agricultural colonies, and research stations, is that we've been thinking of resources as flowing from periphery to center. But, what if we think of them as flowing between equals? Governor Marcus Webb of Proxima Centauri, despite his earlier resistance to change, was furiously taking notes on his datapad. The military efficiency that had made him an effective colonial administrator was now focused on practical details of this emerging new order. The shipping costs alone. He muttered, running calculations. We could reduce transport expenses by 40% if we coordinate directly between colonies instead of routing everything through Earth. 40%? Admiral Catherine Morrison looked up from her own tactical planning session. That's enough to fund 3 new exploration fleets, or establish permanent defensive networks in the frontier systems. Representative Zara Kim from the Vega colonies sat in meditative silence, her crystalline skin patterns pulsing as she communicated with her symbiotic partners through quantum entanglement. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that somehow made her words seem more profound. The crystals suggest that efficiency isn't the only benefit. Direct cooperation creates resilience patterns that centralized systems cannot match. Commander Lisa Santos from the Jupiter research stations was simultaneously coordinating with 6 different discussion groups while maintaining real-time communication with deep space observation posts. The young officer's ability to think in 3 dimensions, a necessity for anyone who'd grown up in zero gravity, made her invaluable for visualizing the complex networks they were designing. The communication matrix is the foundation for everything else, she announced to the assembled representatives. If we can establish instantaneous quantum-entangled links between every major world, we can function as a truly unified intelligence while maintaining local autonomy. Dr. Yoshi Nakamura from the Galactic Core Research Stations nodded approvingly. Our deep space arrays could serve as relay nodes. We've been tracking quantum fluctuations that might allow us to establish stable entanglement across galactic distances. But, it was Ambassador Catherine Hartwell who posed the question that cut to the heart of their revolutionary moment. Are we absolutely certain we're ready for this? We're talking about dismantling 3 centuries of proven stability based on one day's inspiration. The cathedral fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. Through the quantum communication arrays, they could sense the attention of billions of humans across the galaxy, waiting to see what their representatives would decide. King Charles's hologram, which had remained active throughout the discussions, stepped forward. Catherine raises the critical question. But, perhaps we should examine what we mean by proven stability. New data displays materialized throughout the cathedral, showing the increasing frequency of crises that Earth's centralized government had struggled to address. The Zephyrian mining crisis that had nearly sparked civil war. The Andromedan contact protocol disaster that had almost led to interspecies conflict. The ongoing failure to develop effective responses to void hunter incursions. Our traditional system has been stable, the king admitted, but stability isn't the same as effectiveness. We've maintained order by avoiding change, but the universe hasn't stopped changing around us. Dr. Nakamura activated his personal display, showing the latest observations from the deep space monitoring networks. Your Majesty, with respect, we may not have the luxury of choosing gradual change. Our instruments are detecting massive movements in the void regions beyond known space. Whatever the void hunters represent, they're mobilizing on a scale we've never seen before. The display showed sensor readings that defied easy interpretation, vast structures moving through space at impossible speeds, energy signatures that didn't match any known technology, and, most disturbing of all, quantum resonance patterns that suggested active scanning of every human world. They're mapping us, Commander Santos realized, her voice tight with concern. Not just our positions, but our organizational structures, our decision-making patterns, our points of vulnerability. Representative Kim's crystalline patterns flared brightly as she received urgent communication from her symbiotic partners. The crystals are detecting something else. The void hunters aren't just mapping our current organization, they're predicting our responses to various stimuli. They're running simulations. Simulations of what? Admiral Morrison demanded, her military instincts on high alert. Of how we would react to different types of threats, different forms of manipulation, different ways of exploiting our hierarchical dependencies. Kim's voice carried an edge of urgency. They're not preparing to attack us, they're preparing to control us. The implications hit the assembled representatives like a physical blow. If the void hunters could predict human responses based on their centralized command structure, then, Earth's traditional authority wasn't just outdated, it was actively dangerous to the species' survival. Governor Webb stood slowly, his weathered face showing the strain of accepting a reality he'd spent decades refusing to acknowledge. If that's true, then, our resistance to change isn't just conservative, it's suicidal. Which brings us back to the fundamental question, Ambassador Catherine said. Are we ready to bet humanity's future on an untested system? What untested system? Dr. Vasquez challenged. We're not inventing anything new, we're acknowledging what already exists. The colonies already cooperate directly with each other. The research networks already share information freely. The frontier defenses already coordinate without Earth's oversight. We're not creating a new system, we're recognizing the system that evolution has already created. Young Commander Santos activated her communication array and began pulling up data from across the human sphere of influence. Look at the evidence, she said as holographic displays filled the air above them. Every major breakthrough in the last 50 years has come from intercolonial cooperation, not Earth directive. The displays showed an impressive catalog of achievements. The breakthrough in faster-than-light communication had resulted from collaboration between the Martian research institutes and the Centauri engineering collectives. The development of self-repairing hull materials had emerged from a joint project between the asteroid mining operations and the deep space construction platforms. Even the successful first contact protocols with the Andromedans had been developed by frontier diplomats working without Earth's guidance. We've been functioning as a galactic civilization for decades, Commander Santos continued. The only thing holding us back is the pretense that we still need Earth's permission to be what we already are. Dr. Nakamura added his deep space perspective. From our position near the galactic core, we can observe patterns that aren't visible from any single world. The human expansion into space has followed biological principles: growth, adaptation, specialization, and, eventually, independence. We're witnessing a natural evolutionary process. But evolution includes extinction as well as adaptation, Admiral Morrison pointed out grimly. If we make the wrong choice now, we could fragment into warring factions instead of unifying as a species. Representative Kim tilted her head, consulting with her crystalline partners through their quantum link. The symbiosis entities have experience with this transition. They evolved from a centralized hive mind to a distributed network consciousness over the course of millennia. They offer us their insights. The air around Kim began to shimmer, and, suddenly, the cathedral was filled with an alien presence, not threatening, but vast and ancient, carrying the wisdom of a species that had successfully made the transition humanity now faced. Through Kim's translated voice, the crystalline entities spoke. The transformation you contemplate is natural but dangerous. The critical moment comes not when the change begins, but when it must be completed under pressure. Your enemies understand this and will attempt to prevent your metamorphosis. You're saying the Void Hunters will try to stop us from changing? Ambassador Catherine asked. More subtle than that, Kim Crystal replied. They will attempt to force premature change, to make you abandon your old organization without successfully establishing your new one. In the chaos between states, you become vulnerable to external control. The assembled representatives absorbed this sobering perspective. They weren't just facing a political reorganization, they were navigating a critical evolutionary transition while under active observation by hostile forces. King Charles's hologram stepped forward. Which means we can't afford to hesitate, but we also can't afford to rush. We need to demonstrate that humanity can complete this transition successfully. How do we do that? Governor Webb asked. Dr. Vasquez had been quietly running calculations on her personal system. We prove it by solving a problem that the old system couldn't solve. We need a demonstration of distributed intelligence that clearly outperforms centralized authority. The Void Hunter threat itself, Commander Santos realized. If we can develop an effective response to their activities using our new organizational model, we prove the concept works while protecting ourselves. Admiral Morrison's military mind immediately began working on tactical implications. Distributed defense networks, autonomous response protocols, collective intelligence gathering. It could work, but it would require perfect coordination between every human world. Which brings us back to the communication matrix, Dr. Nakamura pointed out. Without instantaneous coordination across galactic distances, distributed intelligence becomes distributed chaos. Representative Kim's crystalline patterns brightened as she received another message from the symbiosis entities. The crystals offer their consciousness-linking technology, but they require a demonstration of commitment. The network will only function if participants genuinely trust each other as equals. A leap of faith, Ambassador Catherine murmured. We have to trust the new system before we can prove it works. The cathedral fell silent again as everyone contemplated the magnitude of the decision before them. They were being asked to abandon everything their civilization had been built on, based on the promise that something better lay on the other side of the transition. It was Governor Webb who finally broke the silence. I've spent my entire career believing in Earth's guidance. But the Proxima Centauri colonies have thrived because we learned to think for ourselves when Earth's guidance wasn't available. Maybe it's time to admit that our independence isn't a temporary measure, it's our natural state. The Mars terraforming project succeeded because we ignored Earth's conservative estimates and pushed beyond what they thought was possible, Dr. Vasquez added. We didn't need their permission to achieve the impossible. Commander Santos nodded. The deep space research networks have been functionally autonomous for years. We've been pretending to need Earth's coordination while actually coordinating ourselves. One by one, the representatives began acknowledging what they all knew but had been afraid to admit: the colonies had already evolved beyond dependence on Earth. The only thing that remained was to formalize what had become reality through necessity and innovation. Then, we're agreed? King Charles asked. Humanity moves forward as a distributed galactic civilization rather than a centralized empire? With safeguards, Admiral Morrison insisted. We need protocols for emergency coordination, dispute resolution, resource allocation during crises. With representation for Earth, Ambassador Catherine added. This isn't about excluding our homeworld, it's about including it as an equal rather than a superior. With gradual implementation, Governor Webb suggested. We can't transition overnight without creating vulnerabilities. Representative Kim consulted once more with her crystalline partners. The symbiosis entities agree to provide their consciousness linking technology, but they suggest we begin with a small test network. A dozen worlds, linked in real time, facing a single challenge together. What challenge? Dr. Nakamura asked. Kim's expression grew serious. There's a void hunter structure growing on the edge of the Veil Nebula. Traditional response protocols have failed. It would be an ideal test of distributed problem-solving versus centralized command. The weight of the proposal settled over them. Their first act as an independent galactic civilization would be to face humanity's greatest threat using an untested organizational model. Are we insane? Admiral Morrison asked quietly. Are we really going to bet everything on a system we've never tried? We've been using this system for decades, Dr. Vasquez replied firmly. We've just been pretending we weren't. The difference is that now we're going to do it consciously, deliberately, and openly. King Charles's hologram smiled sadly. My friends, you're not betting everything on an untested system. You're finally acknowledging the system that has been serving you all along. The question isn't whether it will work, the question is whether you'll have the courage to trust yourselves. Commander Santos activated her communication arrays and began establishing quantum-entangled links with the other volunteers for the test network. Jupiter Research Station's accepting network integration, she announced. Real-time consciousness link established. Dr. Nakamura followed suit. Deep space monitoring arrays online. Galactic core perspective integrated. Dr. Vasquez smiled as her Mars terraforming networks came online. Planetary engineering systems linked. Environmental adaptation protocols shared. One by one, the representatives established their connections to the experimental network. As each new node came online, something extraordinary began to happen. The individual voices didn't disappear, instead, they became part of a larger symphony, each contributing their unique perspective to a collective intelligence that was somehow greater than the sum of its parts. Through the network, they could feel each other's thoughts and emotions, not as invasion but as expansion. Dr. Vasquez's deep understanding of planetary systems merged with Commander Santos's three-dimensional thinking and Dr. Nakamura's cosmic perspective to create insights none of them could have achieved alone. My God, Admiral Morrison whispered as she felt the network's potential. This is what we could become. Representative Kim's crystalline partners pulsed with satisfaction as the human consciousness network stabilized. The transformation begins, she announced. But, remember, the Void Hunters are watching. They will attempt to disrupt the process. As if summoned by her words, alarms began sounding throughout the cathedral. Dr. Nakamura's face went pale as data from his deep space arrays flooded through the network. They're coming, he announced grimly. Massive Void Hunter fleet, emerging from dark space. They're heading directly for the Veil Nebula structure, and they're bringing something we've never seen before. The test of humanity's new evolutionary state was about to begin, and the stakes couldn't be higher. The future of the species would be decided not by kings and admirals, but by the collective intelligence of humans who had finally learned to trust themselves. The Christmas carol service had become humanity's graduation ceremony, but the final exam was just beginning. The quantum consciousness network that had formed in Bethlehem Colony's cathedral suddenly blazed with urgent activity as data from Dr. Nakamura's deep space monitoring arrays flooded through the collective human intelligence. Through the crystalline communication link, 12 human worlds shared the terrifying sight of what was emerging from the void between galaxies, not just individual Void Hunter ships, but an entire fleet formation unlike anything they had encountered before. Sweet merciful stars, Admiral Morrison breathed, her military experience translating the sensor readings into tactical significance. That's not a raiding force, that's an invasion armada. Through the network, they could all perceive what she saw, hundreds of Void Hunter vessels moving in perfect geometric formations, each ship larger than anything in humanity's fleet. But, more disturbing than their size was their behavior. Instead of the seemingly random strikes that had characterized previous encounters, these ships moved with obvious purpose and coordination. Commander Lisa Santos, her consciousness fully integrated into the network while her body remained in the cathedral, felt her perspective expand to encompass the three-dimensional space around the approaching fleet. They're not heading for any human world, she realized. They're converging on the Veil Nebula structure, the one that's been changing our people. Dr. Elena Vasquez's terraforming expertise translated the energy signatures they were detecting. The structure isn't just growing anymore. It's singing. Emitting some kind of harmonic frequency that's propagating across subspace. Representative Zara Kim's crystalline patterns flared as her symbiotic partners analyzed the phenomenon. The crystals recognize this pattern. It's a maturation signal, like a chrysalis announcing that metamorphosis is complete. The implications hit the network simultaneously, a shared realization that rippled through all 12 connected minds. The Void Hunters hadn't been randomly abducting humans. They had been carefully selecting and transforming them, and now whatever they had created was ready to emerge. "We need to get there," Governor Marcus Webb declared, his Proxima Centauri military instincts overriding his earlier reluctance to embrace change. "If our people are in that structure, we have to attempt rescue before whatever's happening completes." "With what?" Admiral Morrison challenged. "The nearest fleet elements are 4 days away at maximum burn, and we have no idea what weapons might be effective against Void Hunter technology." Through the network, they felt King Charles's holographic presence integrate more deeply into their collective consciousness. Despite being an artificial projection, his centuries of leadership experience added weight to their deliberations. "Perhaps," the king suggested, "the question isn't how to reach them with conventional forces, but how to reach them with unconventional thinking. We're approaching this as if it were a traditional military problem, but nothing about the Void Hunters follows traditional rules." Dr. Nakamura's cosmic perspective suddenly shifted as his deep space arrays detected something new. "Wait, the quantum resonance patterns from the structure. They're not random transformations. They're creating something specific, something that matches." His voice trailed off as the full realization hit him. Through the network, the others felt his shock and growing understanding. "Matches what?" Dr. Vasquez prompted. "The consciousness network frequency," Nakamura whispered. "The transformed humans in the Void Hunter structure are resonating at the exact same quantum frequency as our linked minds here in the cathedral." The silence that followed was profound. Through their shared consciousness, they all grappled with the same terrifying possibility. The Void Hunters hadn't been trying to control humanity, they had been trying to force humanity to evolve in the same direction they were naturally heading. Representative Kim's crystalline partners pulsed with urgent communication. "The symbiosis entities say this is the test they warned us about. The Void Hunters are forcing premature metamorphosis. If we respond with old thinking, military force, centralized command, we fail. If we respond with new thinking, we succeed at becoming what we're meant to be," Commander Santos finished. "But, how do we respond with new thinking to a situation none of us understand?" The answer came not from any individual mind, but from the network itself. 12 different perspectives, enhanced by crystalline symbiosis and amplified through quantum entanglement, began processing the problem in ways that no centralized authority could match. Dr. Vasquez's understanding of planetary transformation merged with Commander Santos's three-dimensional thinking. Governor Webb's practical experience combined with Dr. Nakamura's cosmic perspective. Admiral Morrison's tactical knowledge integrated with Representative Kim's symbiotic insights. Slowly, impossibly, a solution began to emerge, not a plan created by any individual, but a collective understanding that arose from their shared consciousness. "We don't fight them," Admiral Morrison said, her voice carrying the certainty of the network's collective wisdom. "We join them." "What do you mean?" Ambassador Catherine asked, her diplomatic instincts alarmed by the suggestion. Through the network, they could all feel the rightness of the emerging strategy. The Void Hunters aren't our enemies, Dr. Vasquez explained. They're trying to help us evolve, but they're doing it wrong. They're forcing individual transformation instead of allowing collective growth. Commander Santos activated her communication arrays, establishing contact with the Jupiter research stations. We need volunteers. People willing to link into an expanded consciousness network and project it toward the Veil Nebula structure. Project consciousness across interstellar distances? Governor Webb asked skeptically. Is that even possible? Representative Kim's crystalline partners pulsed with excitement. Not just possible, necessary. The transformed humans in the structure aren't being controlled, they're calling for help. They're trying to complete the metamorphosis process, but they need connection to the larger human consciousness network. Dr. Nakamura's deep space monitoring arrays were already detecting the beginnings of the phenomenon. I'm reading quantum consciousness resonance building across multiple systems. It's like individual neurons trying to connect to a larger brain. The network buzzed with activity as humans across the 12 connected worlds began understanding their role in something unprecedented. This wasn't just about saving the people trapped in the Void Hunter structure, it was about completing humanity's evolution into a truly galactic species. The consciousness projection will require precise coordination, Commander Santos explained. Every connected world needs to focus their mental energy simultaneously, creating a resonance pattern strong enough to reach the Veil Nebula. And if we're wrong? Ambassador Catherine asked. If this isn't evolution but conquest? We could be delivering humanity's collective consciousness directly into enemy hands. The network paused, considering the risk. Through their shared awareness, they could feel the magnitude of what they were attempting. If they succeeded, humanity would complete its transformation into something unprecedented, a distributed intelligence spanning the galaxy. If they failed, they might lose everything that made them human. It was King Charles who provided the perspective they needed. My friends, every evolutionary leap requires a leap of faith. When our ancestors first left Earth, they didn't know if they could survive among the stars. When the first colonists accepted alien symbiosis, they didn't know if they would remain human. Growth always requires risking what you are for what you might become. Dr. Vasquez felt the network's collective determination crystallize around the king's words. The terraforming of Mars required accepting that the planet would never be exactly like Earth. But it became something better, a world that was uniquely suited to human dreams while being distinctly non-terrestrial. The deep space research stations function because we learned to think beyond planetary limitations, Dr. Nakamura added. We became something more than Earth humans without becoming something less than human. Admiral Morrison's tactical mind was already working on implementation details. We'll need coordination protocols, backup systems, communication safeguards. If we're going to project human consciousness across the galaxy, we need to do it properly. Through the network, volunteers began reporting their readiness to participate. Not just from the 12 worlds already connected, but from dozens of others that had been observing the cathedral's proceedings. Miners from the asteroid belts, farmers from the agricultural worlds, researchers from the frontier stations, humans across the galaxy preparing to contribute their consciousness to something greater than themselves. The Andromedan allies are requesting permission to join the network, Representative Kim announced, her crystalline partners relaying messages from across the galactic community. They've been waiting for humanity to reach this evolutionary stage. Join the network? Ambassador Catherine asked. Are we talking about consciousness links with alien species? We're talking about becoming the first true galactic civilization, Commander Santos replied. Not human hegemony, but human participation in something larger than any single species. The cathedral's quantum communication arrays began resonating with harmonic frequencies as the expanding consciousness network reached critical mass. What had begun as 12 connected human worlds was becoming something unprecedented, a galactic intelligence that included human consciousness as its foundation but extended far beyond any single species' limitations. Through Dr. Nakamura's deep space sensors, they could observe the Void Hunter fleet's reaction to the expanding network. The alien ships had stopped their advance toward the Veil Nebula and were instead taking up positions that suggested they were waiting. They're not attacking, Admiral Morrison realized. They're maintaining a perimeter around the structure, but they're not interfering with what we're doing. Because this is what they wanted all along, Representative Kim said, her understanding enhanced by direct communication with her crystalline partners. The Void Hunters aren't conquerors, they're midwives. They help species make the transition to galactic consciousness. The implications were staggering. If Kim was correct, then, the Void Hunter attacks had been attempts to force humanity's evolution when it appeared they might not make the transition naturally. The abductions, the transformations, the mysterious structures, all of it had been designed to push humanity toward this moment. But, why us? Dr. Vasquez asked. Why is our evolution so important to them? The answer came through the expanding network as alien perspectives began integrating with human consciousness. The Andromedans contributed their ancient wisdom. The crystalline entities shared their experience of successful transformation. And, from somewhere in the vast distances of space, other voices began to join the galactic choir. Through their expanded awareness, they began to understand the truth. Consciousness was not just a local phenomenon, but a fundamental property of the universe itself. Intelligent species that learned to link their consciousness could participate in cosmic-scale intelligence that spanned galaxies and eons. Humanity wasn't just evolving, they were joining something that had been waiting for them since they first looked up at the stars. The projection is ready, Commander Santos announced. All volunteer worlds are linked and synchronized. We can attempt contact with the transformed humans in the Veil Nebula structure. Do it, King Charles said, his voice carrying the authority of his position but also the support of the collective will. Let's find out what our people have become. The consciousness projection launched across the galaxy like a wave of pure thought, carrying with it the hopes, dreams, and determination of humanity's greatest evolutionary leap. In the Veil Nebula, the mysterious structure began to pulse with new energy as it received the contact from its distant cousins. And, in the depths of space, the Void Hunter fleet maintained its vigil, waiting to see if humanity would successfully complete its metamorphosis or if they would need to intervene once again in the complex dance of cosmic evolution. The moment of transformation had arrived. The question was whether humanity was ready to become more than human while remaining recognizably themselves. The moment the consciousness projection reached the Veil Nebula structure, reality itself seemed to shift. Through the quantum network linking dozens of human worlds, every connected mind experienced the contact simultaneously, not as observers, but as participants in something that transcended individual existence. In the Cathedral of Bethlehem Colony, the assembled representatives felt their awareness expand beyond anything they had imagined possible. Dr. Elena Vasquez gasped as her consciousness suddenly encompassed not just her own thoughts, but the experiences of thousands of transformed humans within the alien structure. Commander Lisa Santos found her three-dimensional thinking exploding into 4, 5, 6 dimensions as the cosmic perspective of galactic intelligence opened before her. "They're alive," Admiral Morrison whispered, tears streaming down her face as she felt the presence of humans who had been thought lost forever. All of them are alive, and they're magnificent. Through the network, they experienced the truth of what the Void Hunters had done. The abducted humans hadn't been enslaved or destroyed, they had been carefully prepared for consciousness expansion, their neural pathways enhanced to handle the vast flow of information that came with galactic-level awareness. They had become pioneers, testing the boundaries of what human consciousness could become. Representative Zara Kim's crystalline patterns blazed with reflected light as her symbiotic partners served as interpreters for the overwhelming flow of information. "They're trying to communicate something critical," she announced. "The transformation process, it's not complete. They need the full network to stabilize." Dr. Yoshi Nakamura's deep space monitoring arrays were detecting massive changes in the quantum structure of space itself around the Veil Nebula. "The consciousness projection is creating resonance patterns that extend beyond our local galaxy group. We're not just connecting to the transformed humans, we're connecting to something vast. Through the network, they began to perceive the true scope of what they had stumbled into. The universe itself was alive with consciousness, not just the individual awareness of billions of species, but a cosmic intelligence that emerged when those species learned to connect their minds across space and time. The cosmic web, Governor Marcus Webb breathed, his practical mind struggling to encompass concepts that stretched beyond physical reality. It's not just gravity and dark matter holding galaxies together, it's consciousness itself. King Charles's holographic presence in the network suddenly intensified as the artificial intelligence that maintained his projection interfaced directly with the cosmic consciousness they had contacted. "I can see it," he said with wonder. "The pattern that connects all intelligent life across the universe. We're not just becoming a galactic species, we're joining something that spans all of existence." But, with expanded awareness came expanded responsibility. Through their connection to the cosmic web, they could perceive threats that existed on scales they had never imagined. Dark regions where consciousness had been extinguished by forces of entropy and chaos. Galaxies going silent as their intelligent species failed to make the evolutionary leap that humanity was now attempting. The Void Hunters aren't the only ones out here, Dr. Vasquez realized, her consciousness touching the edges of something vast and hostile moving between galaxy clusters. There are forces that actively oppose the development of cosmic consciousness. Admiral Morrison's military training translated the cosmic scale threats into terms she could process. Entropy lords, beings that feed on the dissolution of organized consciousness. They systematically target species that are approaching galactic awareness, trying to prevent them from joining the cosmic web. Through Dr. Nakamura's sensors, enhanced now by cosmic-level perception, they could detect the approach of something that made the Void Hunter fleet seem insignificant by comparison. Massive distortions in spacetime itself, moving toward their galaxy with purposeful intent. "They know what we're doing," Commander Santos said, her expanded awareness allowing her to perceive the tactical situation across multiple dimensions simultaneously. "The entropy lords are responding to our consciousness expansion. They're coming to stop us." The transformed humans in the veil.